This week's Torah portion, Parshat VaYishlach, comes at the end of a week in which I had the pleasure and the privilege to be in Washington, D.C. for the second conference for rabbis for human rights. And while I was down there at the conference, it was an amazing conference. There was so much energy and so much aliveness and so many people who were devoted to fighting on behalf of those who have no one to fight for them, on speaking for those who have no one to speak for them, and taking up the banner for the underprivileged and for the underrepresented. And so it was great to be with other rabbis and other clergy and to hear perspectives that some of which were provocative and many of which were very inspiring and illuminating for me. And when I think about rabbis for human rights and in general the question of human rights, I'm reminded of a quote that I've read, and the quote says that an enemy is one whose story we have not heard. An enemy is one whose story we have not heard. And this week's Parsha reflects a similar idea. The beginning of this week's Parsha brings together two brothers who, from our perspective, clearly don't get along, or at least it seems so. Jacob and Esau, Yaakov and Esau. And in this week's Parsha VaYishlach, we begin with this meeting between these two, between Yaakov and Esau. And the text tells us that Yaakov prepares himself. The rabbis say that he prepared himself in three different ways, one of which was war, another was appeasement. And so Yaakov is ready for the worst. He's hasn't been with his brother for over 20 years. His brother was swindled by Jacob, and Yaakov fears retribution. He is afraid that Esau remembers and Esau wants revenge. And in many ways, when I think about this story, I'm reminded of this saying, an enemy is one whose story we have not heard. What becomes clear is that Jacob really doesn't know who Esau is. He doesn't know where Esau is coming from. He's not really interested in hearing the pain of Esau or the slight that Esau experienced. Yaakov imagines the worst and prepares himself for the worst. Before Yaakov meets his brother, though, the text tells us that a mysterious encounter happens between Yaakov and an Ish, a malach, an angel. We're told we don't know the name of the angel, and so Yaakov wrestles, Vayavek Ishimo Adalot HaShachar, that Jacob wrestles with an Ish, with a certain man. And the rabbis and Hasidic masters have said that this man is nothing less than the very archangel or the archetype of Esau, the character of Esau, that Yaakov has a kind of wrestling match before the wrestling match with the spirit of Esau, of his brother. And I'd like to say today that maybe an understanding of that wrestling match is that Jacob, in many ways, had to wrestle with whom he thought Esau was, in order for him to be present to whom Esau is. That in many ways, Jacob's fear of the unknown, Jacob's fear of the other, manifests in this wrestling match, this internal wrestling match with his image of his brother. And that in many ways, that in order for Jacob or any of us to truly sit down with one whom we perceive to be our enemy, there's a deep inner reconciliation, a deep inner wrestling that needs to take place between ourselves and our internalized image of who the other is. And when that happens, there is a possibility of true rapprochement, of true meeting to take place between brothers and sisters of God, between all those who seek peace and seek harmony. And I bless each and every one of us that in this Parsha of meeting, especially meeting with those whom we imagine we know, but really deep down, how deeply do we really know them? May we be blessed with the capacity to truly meet the other, truly stand up for the rights of those who have been marginalized. And may we see a day, all of us, um, when Esau and Yaakov, when those who have and those who don't have, those on the inside, those on the outside, can sit down together, listen to each other's stories, and realize in the end there are no enemies, just many, 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 many stories. Shabbat Shalom.